All right, good evening, everybody. So I want to thank everybody for attending. Quick introduction, I'm Terry Coddington. I'm the City of Conway Bike and Pedestrian Coordinator. And I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your schedules to come here and talk about bicycle safety in the City of Conway. And it's an honor to serve as a bike and pedestrian coordinator. I get to represent you as well as the City of Conway. So it's a pleasure to bring everybody together in one room. I think this is probably the first time we've done this. And hopefully we can improve things across the city as a result. So I want to thank some of the guests that we have in the room, Chief Tapley, City of Conway PD, Charles Finkenbinder from the City Attorney's Office. We've got Officer Keir here also, who is on the Bicycle Pedestrian Board with us. We also have Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Board Chair AJ Register, along with who are all the board members? Stand up. Be recognized as Bicycle and Pedestrian Board members. Raise your hand then. We also have Conway's Bicycle Advocates, David DeRosa, President. Any other CAB members, board members? Okay, thanks for being here. I think, Shauna Osborne, are you here? I don't see you. So she was going to be here from Animal Welfare. And I think I've got everybody covered. So again, our goal here is to get everybody together and mainly as city agencies listen to your concerns as well as address some of those concerns, whether it be through education on procedures or how these different agencies can respond in different scenarios. So why now? Why are we doing this now? So we've seen an increase in bicycle-related incidents, whether it be with motorists, dogs, that type of thing. So why now is we want to be proactive. As a city, as cyclists in the community, we want to be proactive at addressing these issues. Conway's growing. In addition, with the recent announcement of the RAISE grant and other projects all around the city, more people are going to be on bicycles than ever. And so it's important that we're proactive now and address this before it becomes a bigger issue later on. So I just kind of wanted to kick that off and really, this is an open forum. This is going to last as long as you're willing to ask questions and talk about concerns and kind of get the discussion going. This is more or less, this is a, what I would call a safe space. Just remember it's recorded. So, so anyhow, who would like to kind of kick this off and help get us started? There's recent concerns over, and we'll just kind of start with, and Shauna's not here, unfortunately, but there's concerns about, we'll just kind of start with animal incidents involving animals within the city limits. We've had some cyclists get attacked. In some cases, you don't get attacked. They run out in front of you. There's damage to property and different things, and dogs running loose. So we've had that. So how can we best, from the city and also whether it's the police or animal control, how can we address those? What's the best way to engage in that and get the process started whenever there's an incident?
So if you're out riding and you have an issue, more importantly, if it's an issue that's ongoing, of course, those property owners are required to maintain their dogs. The proper thing to do would be to contact animal control. Let them know that there is a loose animal in the area. They'll come out. They may not find it the first time. They may not find it the second or the third time. But as we move on, they can figure out where the animal comes from, make contact with the owner, make sure that they're aware of their responsibilities. Yeah. And if need be, they can issue citations and things of that nature. But, and you'll probably hear this from me a couple of times tonight. If we're not aware, we can't fix it. So we have to be aware and make sure that the proper people, the proper entities know what is going on and where it's going
Yeah.
on at.
So, thanks, Chief. So, first step, animal welfare, animal control. And any other, does anybody have any questions? And we'll kind of stop there.
So we've had some incidents in county with some dogs, specifically out east of town, out of sheriff, and they've allowed us, if we have a video of the dog coming off property chasing us, that they will follow up and visit the house, issue citations if necessary. We've had great success with several dogs out east of town with the sheriff's department. I don't know if that's
That would absolutely
positive
help.
here.
That would
Yeah.
absolutely help. It would go toward evidence if there was a citation written, something like that. So, and what you may see, I don't know. First we need to determine, just because the dog's coming off that property doesn't necessarily mean that it's that property owner's dog. It could just be where the animal was at the time. So there still has to be some investigating to determine those type of things, but obviously the video would help.
I was just thinking about those that ride before those facilities are open. What would you suggest us to do for those that are riding a bike at 5 a.m. Or not?
Sure, you can still make that report when they are open. So what I wouldn't want you to do is, oh, they're not open right now, and then not do anything the following day or when they're there. You still need to make that report, let them know that it is an issue, because if you don't make that call and let them know, they never know there's an issue, and so nothing will be done about it.
Dog bite, did you come out real time and somebody called you, chased the dog bite?
So if the person calls and ends up at the hospital will contact us. We come in for those things. So yes, we do come out for dog
From the
bites.
hospital, not at the location.
It
Not at the
depends.
location.
It depends on the severity of it. It's a case by case basis.
Kind of a simple question. So, say we have an incident during working hours with a dog. Is that a call? Can we dial 911? Because sometimes we're a little stressed, or should we look up the number, call 450, whatever?
So it depends on the severity. If you're in danger, if you're in need of immediate help, if you're in need of immediate medical attention, then yes, call 911. If it's something to where you don't need immediate help, it's more of a reporting thing, then dial our radio.
One tip as a cyclist myself that I have, obviously 911 is in there, but the non-emergency number, I save that in my phone for both Faulkner County and Conway PD. So that's helpful in the event that you need it. So you don't have to think about it whenever your heart's pumping 180 beats a minute. And so, go ahead.
Is there a way that you can follow up on things after they report something like that? The reason I ask is, around the community, there's been kind of a sentiment that maybe law enforcement or people they don't really care. You report it to them, it kind of goes on the wayside. So the cyclists, it's kind of been that feeling about something.
So I guess it's going to depend on the incident. If the incident is of such severity that a report is written, then yes, there'll be something to follow up on. If it's just you call dispatch at 9 o'clock at night and say there's a dog that is loose at such and such, there's probably not going to be a report to follow up on that. So it's really going to depend on the circumstances of the situation.
Okay. Property, one question too that I've had in the past, like property damage but no injuries. Say we hit the ground, but you're not really injured, but your bike's tore up, but this homeowner's responsible. So should we file a report or should we try to interact with that homeowner?
So you could file a report. I would not recommend you trying to make contact with the homeowner. That generally does not end well.
Yeah.
And you never know what you're getting into. So
Yeah.
the main thing is if you're in good shape and you don't have to make contact, then let somebody else do that. So that's the first thing I would tell you. You can file a report. In certain situations, it's going to be labeled as an information report. Maybe there wasn't a law broken or an ordinance broken. But the report can still be written, and then you can follow up through the
Yeah.
civil process.
And that would be helpful later on if this dog is a nuisance and there's multiple reports
Yes.
to potentially removing the animal. Okay.
One of the issues, and I'm sure you understand this, is actually locating where that animal comes from.
Yeah.
Because just because you are on Ash Street and the dog is there, that doesn't mean that that dog is owned anywhere in that neighborhood. So by the time an officer or an animal welfare officer gets out, the dog may or may not be there. Then you're trying to locate where it came from, and so it is a process, and it's not always a simple
Yeah.
process.
So, go ahead. One more question.
Right. First, I'm going to tell you that you're responsible for whatever you do, and you're responsible for ensuring that what you do is legal. And so, if you are protecting yourself, then a pepper spray, dog spray, something like that would be fine. When you cross the line into malicious, you're in a different category. So you have to be aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it, whether you're doing it for your safety or whether you're doing it because you're upset. And those two different things mean different results. I would hope not. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
So.
But in all fairness, I think you have to say those things, that you have to make sure that you are doing what is legally right and that it is for your safety and not for other intent. Because not everybody is always reasonable.
And here's a discussion for us as cyclists in the room. If you're routinely encountering dangerous conditions on a road, normally I would change my route. Okay, so if as a group we see animals and they're routinely loose and a nuisance, it would behoove us to change our route. And this is a moving target. Like, this happens all over. Like today there's dogs on, and I'll just use maybe Old Military, and then another day they're on Prince. Like, you don't know. So so I just wanted to point that out, that at the end of the day, while there's inherent risk involved with what we do, I think we all accept that. So, but it's okay to change the route. So I know the favorite routes in town, and we don't want to change those all the time, but just keep that in mind. That is an alternative. If you find yourself riding a certain road and having to grab the pepper spray in advance of encountering the dogs, that's probably a sign that you probably should have adjusted your route. So anyhow, and I'm happy to, if anybody wants to poke holes in that, I'm happy to have discussion with that. Sure.
Have somebody official come and assess that situation, because getting people to never cycle on that road for 2 months.
Right. Right. Good question. That's one of the things that I think we talked about as far as reporting that, so they can locate the dog. But if that becomes, like I said, routine, where we're a week into this and those dogs are there and we haven't been able to locate them, then that's whenever I would start adjusting my route. So.
I wish Shauna was here tonight, but she could tell you that it's really not as easy as we get one phone call about a dog being out. We go out, find the dog, and take care of it. They have spent weeks trying to locate animals that have gotten many reports on. So it can be difficult at times, especially if maybe it doesn't belong to a particular person. Maybe it's just a stray that stays in the area. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. and it's, you got to think of it too is, these animals are somebody's personal property. Look at it that way. And we can't just show up because a cyclist said, um, that dog was a nuisance and take control of that animal. There's got to be proof and evidence. So that's how I'm understanding. So.
Absolutely.
Question more for the audience. What do you guys use That was gonna be one of my statements, was not advocating for any of them, but understand whether or not you have a gel base or an aerosol, and how it's gonna carry in the air. Some will blow right back in your face, especially if you're cycling.
So good stuff. Anything else on the animal issues that before we move on to anything else? Yeah. 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 Yeah, we've got that contact information, and what I'll do, I'll reach out to him and make sure he's okay with it, but we'll put that information out there to the cycling community, for everybody to save in their phones as well. Sound good? Yeah. 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 Sometimes it's just a dog doing what dogs do, but they still cause damage. They don't mean to. So. Yeah. Yeah. So I think, I was gonna say like no 5 a.m. police escort for the 5 a.m. group ride, chief. So,
Probably not.
okay. Just thought I'd throw that out there. All right. So, good discussion on that. So probably now that we're warmed up, we're gonna go into a little more sensitive topic with aggressive motorists. And one of the things that my wish as bike pedestrian coordinators, we need to bring the community along with us. I don't want to create a us versus them mentality in our community. And so it's very important that we as cyclists in the community hold that standard. We all get upset, and it's frustrating, but I want to have some discussion around what to do when certain things happen and the processes through which that goes and any legal, I guess, what the laws are and different things like that. So does anybody have any specific ideas or things that you want to address on a specific incident or anything along those lines?
So there's I guess, a half mile section that we're riding, and oftentimes, I would say more than 50% of the time, I get brushed by a vehicle, really close. Like I can smell them in their car, and so there's no 3 foot. There's not any cars coming towards them. There's just the dirt. They're not seeing it. So that happens a lot. I don't know how we can, as a community, fix this, but this is a problem
So
that oftentimes happens every
If you want, Chief, I'll kind of chime in on this and then I'll let you take over. But I think one of the things that we need to do a better job of, there's a lot more incidents that are ever reported. And so it's hard to recognize as city agencies that what the true problem is and what type of infrastructure and different things that for those areas, and kind of develop more or less like a frequency, like where are they happening, and then what infrastructure is in that area, or those types of things. So the more we report these things, and it's tough to get a tag number whenever somebody's brushing by you at 50 miles an hour. I've become an expert at it. But anytime you can get a tag number or description of the vehicle or whatever, and at least call that in for even if it's just like a info only or report only, I think it becomes helpful in case we've heard of instances in other communities where it's habitual, as far as the community against the cyclists. And I'll just use Little Rock. Every time the Big Dam Bridge rolls around, the tax come out on certain roads. So similar reporting that instance with these motorists is going to help determine frequency. And then we can look as bike pedestrian coordinator, police department, different things. We can look at those areas and look at what infrastructure is in place, if it's non-existent and needs to be added, or if it needs to be improved, things of that nature. But it's without the initial report, it's difficult to start that process and figure it out. So then I'll kind of turn it over to you.
I believe it'd be just like we have with vehicles all the time. We have numerous traffic complaints each week that, people are running stop signs here or stoplights or things of that nature. So it would be along those same things. If we're getting complaints, we identify certain times, certain area, then we can have people in those areas to help out. And keep in mind, we have multiples of those with vehicles and everything else, so it's not always, hey, I called today, somebody's there tomorrow. But we do try to work those things out. The second thing I would say is education. I don't know how you would do it or what you would particularly need to do, but I think there is room for education to the public on bicyclists and the dangers and staying away, the 3 feet, things like that. I think
Yeah.
some of that would help as well.
Okay.
If there's a way to work with Conway Corp or something like that to get that put out. But I think a lot of people don't even realize there's a freeway. And so they're just coming around and may not even know that they're supposed to be further away from you than what they are. And then, of course, there's the ones that you said that are just jerks and do it because they can. I think it goes both ways.
So one of the things that you mentioned, the education, that I've met with, the chamber has some interest in doing a campaign on safe cycling in Conway. And one of the discussions that we've had with former City Councilman Wes Pruitt and the chamber, might put some money behind it. We're looking into that, is to humanize us as cyclists, to show that we're mothers, fathers, we're part of the community, sons and daughters and all of that stuff. So in hopes that would be social media campaign for the community. So that's something that's in the early processes. And I do think their education would be a step in the right direction that we can work on as part of that. So again, kind of with I guess whenever they're somewhat intentional, like Tara was saying, if there's any way to get a tag number. One thing too, I've had several incidents myself, and I've come to the realization that, like, if I'm riding by myself, like, having a bike camera becomes very helpful because it can tell the story. And there's cases out there. I haven't had any with CPD, but other law enforcement agencies where they've used that camera footage off of the bicycle to be able to process. That's the evidence that they needed to be able to process those charges for vehicles intentionally endangering somebody of that nature. So do you have any advice on that? If you had video footage,
Well, it takes it away from being he said, she said at that point.
Right.
It's no longer one person saying this and the other person saying something completely opposite. The video evidence, as you said, would speak for itself.
Right.
I think that, I think you would agree. I got your name.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And presenting it in court, because there are some statutes that have presumptions that the registered owner is the driver, right? Since involving drivers of motor vehicle, it's usually very difficult to positively identify who's driving. You could say there was a car, you could even say that it belongs to a certain person. But proving that owner was actually driving the car, that's where it kind of goes off the rails. And there is no presumption. So the more information that we get, the better. Now, even just having the name of the registered owner can help. I know it's helped us with school buses and crosswalks, because I contact people all the time whose cars violate those safety laws. And sometimes I'm talking to the person who was driving, and sometimes I'm talking to their mom or their dad. So there's more than one way to go about this. And I don't know a mom or dad that doesn't want to know that Junior's driving the car that they bought and insured in danger.
What about witnesses? What about, we have a lot of times drive with safety, and all 10 or 15 of those people see one vehicle like coming at us, or, intentionally trying to, mess with us or get really, really close. I mean, does that do anything if you have 15 people that all say the same thing, they got the license plate, said, hey, this dude almost hit you, this person almost hit us? Will that go? I mean, at what point how many, I guess, calls or reports have to be done for you guys to be like, we need to go talk to this guy for that,
So the 15 people or the 10 people or whatever is great. But what you also have to know, and a lot of people don't understand this, a misdemeanor that does not happen in the presence of a law enforcement officer, they can't go make an arrest on that. So we can get the report from you, we can take all the statements, everything like that, and then it is submitted to the prosecutor's office to look at. The thing that, where a lot of things fall through the cracks are, the individual has to follow up with him in order to get those warrants. It's not the police department that does that. So that's where things kind of get off track a little bit. The individual that is submitting the report, yes. So they're the victim. They would need to contact his office and work that out.
Sorry, we'll go back to you. You've been patiently waiting. Sorry.
To the education
Okay.
situation, I'm kind of a new resident of Conway. Have you ever thought putting a column monthly, weekly in the log cabin, just to inform people, non-cyclists, what the laws are, what they need to look out for? I know a lot of times I encounter people, performance.
Yeah.
Obviously you have to be aware of your situation and surroundings. That's what I see around here. But some of the laws, the 3-foot laws, people might not know anything about that. Ride through stop signs, things like that. People might not know what you're allowed to do.
Right.
Just some kind of an info column monthly.
Right.
Or maybe just one all-encompassing column.
I like that idea. I know it may have been a while since we've done it, but with May being Bike Month, there's been more or less a social media campaign, but nothing. Not every. Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I like the idea. So you're volunteering to help me write that? Okay. All right. I got it. Yeah. 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 I do. I do think the education thing, what we need to do a better job of is it has to be like the drip method and it has to be consistent. So we'll work on that.
Very good idea.
That's a cheap idea, but I'll take credit because that's what we do. I think it's a great idea. I think the more that the word gets out, I know the city's Facebook page is pretty popular.
Yeah.
And they could do a regular, I would think, they would be interested in doing some little regular, not featured. Felicia, I didn't say, I'm not committing, no commitment going on here. But just a little post that says, hey, watch out for bicycles, or something along those lines. I think it would definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, Felicia?
So
So let's jump back for a second on, we're talking about data collection for students. Tell me if I'm getting it right, that what you're looking for is cyclists who on their own report incidents and a massive collection of reports, and then we will get data on the road. And it sounds like there is budget for education and we're not looking at proactive data collection. That's kind of how
I would say,
this group could tell you really quickly, here are the 5 most dangerous intersections, most
right.
dangerous roads to look at infrastructure for. But it sounds like we're waiting to get reports before it's
Right. It's typically incident response. And so the data is driven by incidents. So in order to collect, yes, we can all say what the most dangerous is, but if you have data, then that helps support, like our Complete Streets program and different things with the city engineers, then we can direct that anytime these roads are being improved, by the way, there's a Complete Streets program where cycling is integrated into that road being redone, redesigned, redeveloped. And like if it's even if it's just being recapped, the Complete Streets addresses the cycling aspect of it. So,
So let me follow up with a question because I'm not sure I understand. When you say the 5 most dangerous intersections, what are you speaking to as far as what are the dangers? Is it road conditions or is it vehicular traffic? What are we talking
If I
about?
heard correct, what you mentioned, looking at infrastructure improvements and traffic, at least in my experience, and other people may feel differently, is that's typically the areas we're getting most conflict. It's where we've got highest speed country roads that don't have shoulders, don't have barriers, odd changes between bike lanes present, bike lanes end. I personally encounter a lot of conflict on Market Street after it's redesigned, after it comes into the gutter every 20 feet. So that's what I'm wondering is, do we have room to just go out and collect good data the first time, or do we, how many times does my bike need to get scraped before the city's looking at a pressure zone?
right. I mean, I would say depending on the severity of the incidents and how it's reported and all that, obviously drives how fast the response is. I'm not going to speak for city engineers and street department and all that, but all that comes into play. If there's an increase in severity in one area, then we're going to take a look at that versus, there. Like I said, this is all purely incident driven, the data, and it's important that all these other incidents that aren't being reported that don't involve property damage get reported. That's the ask that I'm making, is that there's a lot of things that are not causing property damage that are reportable that can help point us in the direction. You don't have to get injured. I want to make that very clear. We're not saying you have to get injured before change is made, but the data helps the more we report these non-injury related incidents. Right. Right.
Also, and know what laws, I'm thinking roundabouts.
Yeah.
What do I do when I hit a, so that the non-cyclist who doesn't ride 4,000 miles a year knows how to act when they hit a certain area.
Right.
Like a roundabout.
Right.
It would depend on the severity. It really, the charge that comes to mind, and this is his field here, but the charge that comes to mind for me would be harassment, um, disorderly conduct. If on one end of it, it could, depending on the severity, go into some other charges, but generally, I would think of harassment or something like that.
It could be misdemeanor assault. It could be all the way up to felony aggravated assault. It really depends on, like the chief said, the circumstances. So, for example, and it really comes down to what does a judge think. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day what the chief and I think, because whatever we do, we have to be submitted and approved by a judge at some point. So, to take two examples, if a driver of a motor vehicle just gets angry at a cyclist for no reason and swerves at the cyclist, or the cyclist has to move. If the cyclist doesn't move, the cyclist will come into contact with the car, for example. And I think it's kind of what you're talking about. That would probably constitute a misdemeanor assault in my mind. It was a threat to cause harm or to put fear of imminent harm into the cyclist. That's an assault. That would be a misdemeanor. Now, if you change it and the cyclist is driving along, and instead of just swerving to get out of the way, the cyclist has to jump off the bike in order to keep from being run over, and then the bike gets run over by the car. That would probably be more a felony aggravated assault. Had the cyclist not taken the action that he could have been killed or seriously injured, and the driver of the car knew or should have known. So, but that's just what lawyers and police officers think. Ultimately, it has to be submitted to a court for approval.
I just want to add on to that. So I had a similar incident that happened to me last January. A driver did swerve, and his wife pointed their truck at me, and I had to jump off my bike, and my bike got run over. I did take all of the steps that you need to take. My lawyer handled most of it, but the case ended up getting dropped because the driver was in a company truck. And the company truck was based out of Florida. At which point, my lawyer was not going to take it to federal court. He said that at that point he needed to go to federal court. So the case got completely dropped. I don't even know if the guy lost his job. I don't know if he even got a ticket. But I was on the hook to replace my bike because he lost years.
So your civil attorney
Yeah,
dropped the case because
Yeah.
he would have had, he thought he would have had to file in federal court.
right. Well, I mean that's that's the information I got back. And I know we all had a friend who had his bike run over a couple weeks ago, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
What happens when you take all the right steps? Do they ever get a ticket? Is there any way to find that information out?
So the civil end of it is completely different than the criminal end. And it sounds like you went the civil route on this case. But again, it's a case-by-case basis. It really is about what can be proven. That's where the cameras would obviously come in handy. But each case is going to be a little bit different. Whether we can find the driver, whether we can find the car, whether we can decide or determine who was actually driving the car at the time, all of those things come into play. So the answer is yes, there's things that can be done about it. It doesn't always work out the way you would like it.
What?
Have any control over us.
Yeah.
It would be a decision. But if a report was made with the police, and they were able separate cases.
You also have to determine, are we talking about an accident, or are we talking about something that was intentional? And that will make a difference as well.
So, it always goes back to case by case, but it sounds like, the trouble identifying the driver. If you were to have something like that, or our friend was hit, the driver, they stop, but they drive off. They have a description of the car, they go back to the house. They always have that to fall back on. I wasn't driving. You can't prove it.
They always have to fall back on, doesn't mean it works. And Conway PD does a really good job with getting around accidents. They will do what it takes to find the people, even if it's having to coordinate with law enforcement in another county. They coordinated with Perry County recently, and were able to apprehend, identify, and apprehend the driver of a hit and run vehicle. So, but it's not always easy. Somebody may be operating a vehicle with fictitious plates. It may be a stolen vehicle. It may have no plates at all. And that can make it very almost impossible for any police department to be able to put it in. Doesn't mean that I've tried, but it's just sometimes it's just not possible.
I'm going to kind of address the elephant in the room that whenever we get frustrated with a motorist, probably one of the worst things we can do is confront that motorist. So I just wanted to bring that up. There's, and full disclosure, I've done that, and I walk away from it going, I probably shouldn't have done that. There's you don't know what's going on in the other people's minds, and we've all got families and things to go home to, and it's not, at the end of the day, it's not worth it. But so anyhow, I just wanted to bring that up, that that we can't have that going forward. And then a lot of times too, what will end up happening is not everybody sees like we're representing our community and trying to improve it. And what people will see is a cyclist running up and being animated. They never saw the car almost hit us. They just see the cyclist running up to the door and yelling and screaming and throwing a water bottle, maybe in the back of their bed in a roundabout. I don't know. That's never happened. So I can neither confirm nor deny. So.
Kind of tie in the two questions on data collection and if they ever get issued a citation for accidents. About 2 years ago for BPAB, we went through 5 years of every pedestrian bicycle related vehicular accident. We mapped it on a map to show where those happened. So we do have some data collection already done. After I'm off light duty, we're going to revamp that map with current so that we can use that data already as we move forward. As far as citations, if you reported the accident on the accident report, we will note that citation is issued.
And if I remember correctly on that data, it was not intersection driven.
No,
a lot of it was,
entrance ways into businesses and
yeah.
everything else, and a lot of it was bicycle hitting cars.
I think I saw your hand first, Peter.
Yeah, I want to go back to Sarah's point about this a little bit different question about how best to ride on the road in a group. So again, a lot of us who know this, about 5:30, or it was 6:30 zone, now it's 5:30. We leave the PD center, and we go out. So that's the busiest section. Usually 15, 20, sometimes even 30 cyclists heading out to Hogan. We've had a lot of debates about how we should do that. Do we try to maintain single file, and it's really not a bike lane? It sort of starts as a bike lane, but it gets narrow and narrow and about a foot. You got about a foot left. Or should we just maybe stay 3 or 4 abreast and just take the lane and go out, and everybody's behind us, waiting to get by?
To be quite honest with you, I don't know. I don't know what the best way to do that is.
Yeah.
I would rather single file. And here's why. Bicyclists by law, they have the same rights to the roads that everybody else does. But the fact of the matter is, you ain't ride something to take it far. And one thing I've benefited from in the last couple of years is being on the roads at crosswalks, at bus stops. And one thing I learned at the crosswalk within the first couple weeks is accommodation was the key. What I mean by that is when I first went out there, I thought, I'm going to push the button, cars are going to stop, I'm going to stop them, by golly, and I'm going to take these kids across. And then I realized that I don't always have to push the button. I can wait. Maybe there's just a couple cars and the kids really early, and so I would wait to push the button. And the difference was dramatic. I mean, now we've gone in a year situation where I was reporting 5, 6 violations of the law every morning. This fall, we haven't had a single one. And most of the time, the drivers are stopping before I even push the button. It's the same people. It's the same drivers. It's the same road. It's the same kids. It's the same nerdy crossing guard. The only thing that changed was we kind of made a deal with each other. My part of it was I'm not just going to push the button when I can. And their deal was I'm going to start watching out for the kids. And so far, we didn't write anything up, but so far it's working. And so that would be my preference. Not required to, but just like the stop sign law. For example,
Yeah.
y'all probably a lot familiar with the stop sign law.
The Idaho stop. Yeah.
If you can, I would stop. It's a form of accommodation. You don't have to, but that would just be my recommendation. Just again, there's people that don't like cyclists. I love to cycle. One of my favorite parts of the town right now is Donnie. I love the dedicated cycle lane. That is amazing. It's the only cycle lane I would take my kids on. I'll shut up now.
And before I take any more questions, I'm going to give my 2 cents on taking the lane. As a cyclist who's been struck by a vehicle several times over the 20 years, and the way I take the lane is, just because we could technically ride all the way out to the yellow line doesn't mean we should. That's not being good partners in the community, based on like what Charles is saying. So if the road conditions on the shoulder are unsafe, I'm going to ride in the right tire track. And I'm going to give myself enough room to the right that if I feel a vehicle coming close to me, that I can move, and I can move over to the right and buy myself more space between myself and that vehicle. So I just wanted to share that tip. I had an accident 2005 in Florida where I was struck from behind by a vehicle in Florida, and obviously the driver was at fault. But whenever I look back at it, there was things that I could have done whenever I reflected back on it, that I could have potentially avoided that from ever even happening had I done it that way. So I'll take some more questions.
So you keep saying cameras and footage would be ideal, but we can't have like a camera all around it. And so would a rear-facing camera or would a forward-facing camera, if you can't afford both, be more ideal?
That's going to depend on whether the incident is coming.
Or do I want
Yeah.
the incident about to occur?
I think it depends on where the incident is coming from. If you can get the license plate and the camera gets the other, that's great. It doesn't do any good if the camera gets the front of the vehicle and no one gets a license plate. So it's really tough to say. Is the threat coming from the front? Is the threat coming from behind? Is it coming from a side street? So I don't think that there is a one thing will cure everything. You guys have been on bikes a lot more than I have. You know where the best placement for that would be based upon your experiences on the road.
The incident I referenced that happened in Little Rock, the camera's facing forward. The vehicle basically almost brushed the rider, and the camera was forward facing, and they could stop frame and get the tag number, even though there's a high rate of speed. But they could still tell there was not 3 feet, and that it was how close it was. So that's just a point of reference. I'm not saying either way. It's obviously. Go ahead.
So I want to address the lane position.
what we've been hearing basically. The problem with that, and I don't know what you mean when you say ride single file, so you can ride single file on the shoulder, you can ride single file in the middle of the lane.
He was riding the bike. Go ahead.
I was riding the bike.
Yeah.
So, right, well, your suggestion, you know, so you can ride single file. So like there's lots of places you can ride single file. The problem is that I think people get so far into that mentality that they will sacrifice their safety in order to be accommodating. And I think that's certainly the case on that section of Hogan. So the League of American Bicyclists have a suggestion, or their suggestion is, if the lane is less than 14 feet wide, it is not wide enough to share with the vehicle. The issue is if you ride single file and you take the shoulder, or you take close to the right side of the road, especially on Hogan there, vehicles coming behind you will see that as you're not a road user. You're conceding that area to them and inviting them to, you know, squeeze by there with oncoming traffic. And what you'll get is, you know, these big trucks with the towing mirrors, they're 8 feet wide. And so if the lane is, we've measured it, I think, to 12 feet wide. So if you have a cyclist who's, you know, 2 feet wide, they need to pass you with at least 3 feet of space, and they're 8 feet wide, they're going into oncoming traffic. And I think, you know, we've all seen, when we've ridden out there's cars driving off the road honking at vehicles as they, you know, go around us and realize that there's not enough space for them to pass us. We'll either get brushed by the car, or they'll go into that other lane, and other cars will almost have to drive off the road in order to avoid them. So I think this goes back to education. We always want to say, you know, oh, we need to educate drivers to pass with 3 feet, but, you know, call me a cynic. I don't think we're not going to reach everybody. Everybody who hears it isn't going to want to do that in the moment. They're not always thinking back to, oh, I need to give them 3 feet of space, so I need to slow down and then pass my space. I think the bigger aspect of safety would be proper lane positioning, because if there's a cyclist there, they're going to wait until it's clear to move over into the other lane and pass you. So this is something I'm passionate about. You know, I think safety can be addressed by lane positioning, and I think more often than not, cyclists will fall on the wrong side of that safety versus being accommodating to motorists. And I think, you know, maybe in addition to motorist education, we need to have cyclist education, saying, take the lane when you need it. If you're going to err on the side of your safety. You know, people, they get held up, I'm sorry, you know, 10, 20 seconds out of their day versus, you know, somebody's life if a car passes too close. You know, I know what I'm going to pick. It's not a comfortable choice to make. You know, you always feel like you're holding people up and ruining their days, you know, based on the feedback that you get from them shouting out their window. But that's where I fall. I think that's what the league promotes, and so and you know, even crazier idea, two abreast on streets like that to, you know, make the line shorter in order to let cars pass more quickly when they do get an opportunity to come into the lane. So,
And it's,
yeah, okay.
sorry.
As long as you're going to.
So one of the things that, if you had an officer sitting at 5:30, like at that church up there on Hogan, there's no telling how many people crossing the double yellow line. And that's the one thing, I mean, you guys write tickets for people that cross the double yellow line when they're passing cyclists or anything else on the road.
I can't tell you if we have or we haven't. I don't have that data. It would be, we would have to be there at the time and see it. But if it's an ongoing thing, if this is something you're seeing every day, let us know. And it doesn't have to be a written incident report, but just you have to let us know, and we can address those things. Early mornings, we do shift changes, shifts coming in. trying to get the reports done, other shifts going out, really busy time of the day for us. But if we know there's an issue, we can address that issue. And I couldn't honestly tell you if anybody knows what you're sitting here telling me tonight. So if they don't know, they're not going to be looking for it, and they're probably not going to be on that stretch of road at that time of day to see it.
So if I can just jump in real quick, follow up. The laws do, I've looked into this, I'm not trying to take anybody's job, and I may not be
Hey, you can
correct.
have it.
So in Arkansas, it's a bit of a gray area. From my understanding, typically crossing a double yellow, you are, I believe the law states that you can cross a double yellow to avoid a hazard or some type of obstruction in the road. Whether a slow-moving vehicle or a cyclist is an obstruction is left up to whoever's writing the ticket and the judge at some
I
point.
don't think it would qualify as an obstruction.
So, and that's what I was gonna say, is I don't, if somebody's waiting to safely pass cyclists, over a double yellow, like, I would much rather prefer that than to riding in the shoulder, so.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We just did a lot of, and to AJ's point again, with the longer single file lines, sometimes, they think they have enough room to pass and they come up on us. And so that's a lot of time while we drive to address, they're on Hogan is to shorten the line by half. And like they have a lot less room to, or a lot less distance they have to cover before they get in front of them. Because there's been several times the front cyclists in that group almost get smashed because they're trying to get over too fast and there's oncoming cars with, double yellow lines. So.
It's almost like riding downtown. Definitely take the lane when you're riding around downtown.
Absolutely, yeah. And you can go the speed limit, basically.
I hope it's very much like that. If we had a big shoulder, it would be different. But we don't have a bike lane on Hogan. We have like about a foot. So AJ's point is well taken. That we put 2 or 3 out there abreast. That's safer than going, trying to get by you and easing by you. Make them wait a little bit. Most people have been all right with that. When there's been a big gap, then they'll come around, and if we're 2 abreast, there's less distance for them to get around.
Why haven't we explored there? Why don't we just go left out of there? Go down country.
We still have to do a little bit of Hogan country. College to read.
Not the one takes a right, goes past. Yeah, no, the one on top of, why can't I think of the one on country?
Yeah, country club, yeah. Like that goes to the route deviation thing that I brought up earlier. Like if there's unsafe conditions and you're routinely seeing that, then that's telling you you should deviate your. So one before we go on to the next question, and I know you might not be able to speak to this, Chief, but because it's at the state level, is anybody aware of what the driver's education program does with cycling? Okay, all right. So.
I was just saying, you talked a lot about bringing together data, reports, and things. I wasn't aware. Maybe everybody else in the room knows about it, but the BPAB link to report y'all collect all the data on.
Yeah.
Everybody else posted last week. I don't know. I didn't.
Yeah. Well, that's just created in preparation for this, but we're going to keep that going, right? So. Yeah. 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 No, you gotta.
Not to sit there and write tickets, but to make people aware that trouble for crossing that double yellow, because there's going to be about 30 cyclists there in 20 minutes. Does that make sense? What can we do? Do we need to report that as like a, hey?
So are you saying, I'm trying to get you're there every Monday, or specifically that you're going to be there on Monday, or you're there every afternoon at that time?
Monday and Wednesday at 5:30. That's the stretch of traffic. It's probably the same cars every time. And see a group of, up to 40 people coming on us. Their way, as soon as incidents can happen at the station, officers
So we can check, obviously I don't have everybody's schedules memorized, and I don't know who's gonna be here and who will not. Generally, these types of situations are handled by our traffic unit. And so I would really need to check with them, see what their schedule is, if they've got something else that day that is already planned. But that's something we can check into. Forgive me, but I'm still not sure exactly what portion of Hogan Road are we talking about.
This is from, Collins to.
Okay.
Yes, where it's,
Yeah.
I believe we have so many bike lanes and stuff on that road. Bike, there's lanes with bike signs, is that correct?
There's a bike lane starting from.
Yeah, and then it narrows down. Yeah. Yeah. I think the prudent thing to do for that would be to try the reroute. Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to, you could always go down Tucker Creek and then access Country Club that way on Tucker Creek, so. Lower speed, and whenever you're on that, I believe there's, the traffic humps and stuff, so. Right. Okay.
So just going to tell you from experience how this works. We get complaints in an area. We go out there to that area. Things get better. We move on to other complaints and other things. Things go right back. So you're always chasing that. So while enforcement is an option and it can help, it's a very short window that it helps, and it's not the full-time solution that you guys are looking for, because we're not going to be able to be there all the time, and we're not going to be able to be there every Monday at 5:30. So while we can do that, and that will help, that is not the complete answer.
Well, I mean, temporarily, and I'm just gonna, we're actually at 7:33, so I just want to remind everybody we're kind of at the end of this, but I mean, we can put a request in for more signage. The streets department's moving away from painted sharrows and going to more signage on the side of the road, so we can increase that to see if that helps in the immediate future. But there's also potential reroutes and things you can do. So.
But what if you take the lane, the cyclists take the lane, motorists learn that they need to slow down. If they get behind, a group of cyclists there, they need to slow down to 15, 20 miles an hour. The same way that they learn that they need to stop if they come up to a railroad crossing, or if you get stuck behind the mailman somewhere, you have to slow down. I don't, I might be crazy, but I don't know why expecting that for, that stretch of Hogan there twice a week is not reasonable.
So AJ, for doing WDA for 7 years, that was a standard route for us as well. And we would have our caboose person make sure that they were telling the car behind us, you stay back, like giving like a stay back here sign. And we didn't have problems when we were communicating with the car that it is not safe for you to pass. And then once it was, we told the back person it's clear, and they would motion them around. And normally we get a toot like, hey, thanks for letting me know it's safe. And so the rear caboose of the cyclist would be the communicator and would be the protector of that group.
And did you guys go single file?
We went single file, but we also went in the entire, like the right wheel area. And I mean, I rode with, we had 100 women. I mean, we did it for, I think in 5 years, we had like 100 women. Yeah, so we did 20 groups, and so.
We also have to remember that is the busiest time for that road.
Yeah.
Ever. So if
Yeah.
Yeah, we can always change the start, you know, that's not a bad idea.
Riding south of town for 95 is not a ride, not
Yeah, yeah. I just I wanna add something, you know, like Charles was saying, is, I've ridden for years without children, so now that I have kids, I think a lot differently. I need to be home, right? Um, I just, you know, I want everyone to know, and, you know, I would tell anybody this, like, just don't ever forget that you're on a bike and they're in a car. You know, like, I love starting out in the heat. You know, I drive from Little Rock all the way to Conway to do the Monday, Wednesday ride when I can. But we do live in a world where 95% of people are going to say, hey, these people are in the road and they're crazy and I have to slow down. But there is a 5% chance that you might catch someone on a bad day and they're just flat out going to run you over, which is happening, it's becoming common. So I think that always needs to be in the mix. Like, I get scared now. When I hear a car coming a little bit faster than I think the speed limit might suggest, I think in the back of my head, like, okay, how quickly do I need to scoot over?
Yeah.
But when you scoot over, it just tells that person, I have enough room, and they're going to take it.
So like on any type of deal, we try to accommodate them. My wife and I were past Sunday downhill over a double yellow truck, flying across past us in a corner. Yeah, we try to accommodate, and try to work, but it's that you're battling that public sentiment against cyclists. I think.
Yeah.
I know I'm looking at you. I know you
One-
have an answer.
yeah.
Education.
One tip before we go, and it's equipment based, is there's the taillight out there, Eric Garmin variant. Is that it has a radar in it that will show you on your head unit the cars coming up, and whenever the closure rate is over 25 miles an hour, it turns red. When it does that, I'm automatically turning my head over my shoulder, making eye contact, and so I can ID the car. I get an idea if I have to take some type of evasive action or whatever. So there's technology out there that can help to some degree, but it's not the fix all. So at the end of the day, I want to thank Chief Tapley for your time. I know I kind of threw you to the fire here this evening and put you in this. So Charles Finkenbinder, City Attorney, thank you all, Officer Keir, and all of our CAB and BPAB representatives. We need to keep working it. The more people we get on bikes, the safer the community is going to get. So don't give up. As a city, we're not going to give up. We're going to keep working to make it better. And that's our commitment. So I've got some good takeaways from this discussion tonight. And that's all I have. Thank you.